Well, let's dive right into this. Last time we talked about PKM tools and what are the PKM tools that Paco is using, personal knowledge management tools. And we opened up this ICOR framework that you see on the screen. If you're watching the recording or you're listening to the recording on the podcast, you probably don't see it, but we want to make sure that you will still understand and get the point, even if you're just listening to this. And today we talk about PPM, personal project management, or in the commonly known wording, task management. Task/time management. That both falls into this category. And that's where the action happens. So last time we covered the personal information management. Today we will talk about the personal action management. And the next sessions we will then dive into the business part, where we talk about the team parts of information and action. Paco.
Yeah.
Last time we added the Gmail in an intersection of business knowledge management, personal knowledge management, and personal project management. Mm-hmm. So therefore, Gmail is already the first tool that you consider being a task management tool. Why is that?
It's not the case, of course.
It's not the case.
Yeah.
Not task manager for you. Why not?
Well, this
if big corporates I worked for and worked with use email as their core application for project management, why isn't you doing this with your companies?
Because, I use it as a disguised task manager, okay? We call it that way. The conversation should go much deeper to really understand this, because we are getting into one of the core pillars, or I would say the core pillars of any productivity system or any system that are routines, okay? Because they are the main ingredient, I would say, to build a productivity system. So we can consider that if we are using a routine to manage the tasks that any email represents, okay, then it could be considered as a task management tool, and that's why it's there, okay? The thing is that it should always be for you, not for everyone, okay? So that's why, in my opinion, it will be, because here we can see how flexible this tool is, because it depends on how you think and how you want to approach the tool, okay? Because here, for instance, if we put it just, consider that...
Now, when you say tool, you're referring to the ICOR framework?
No, I'm referring to the app, okay? The software, to Gmail, correct. Okay. To Gmail, well, many people can consider that it's just something that belongs to themselves, okay? Because they don't care. They think that it's nothing related to anything related to the company. They're, for instance, solopreneurs, and maybe it's just a tool that is in the intersection between PKM and PPM, for instance. So we could put it there. It depends on how you see that tool, okay? How you see that tool. But the point I want to communicate here is that nothing is incorrect, okay? Because this is something that many people, okay, ask for it, especially when we are in our sessions inside the Inner Circle program, our direct coaching program, that people try to find out an answer of, is this correct? Is this incorrect? No, just put it there, analyze how you see that tool, and then add as you may consider, because this needs to be in clarity, okay? Clarity. So if you consider that information related to the team is already there, that could be also the use case for many people, then leave it there. You're going to keep breathing without any problem, okay? You can keep living without hurting your...
We usually say we place it into the BKM, the business knowledge management area too, because you're receiving either from the team information that is relevant for the work that you need to do.
Correct.
Or you get client information. You have correspondence with your suppliers and things like that. And all those count as business knowledge and information that you have inside email. And therefore, it's only in your email if you don't move it forward. And a bit sarcastic, I meant how corporates are using email clients like their project management. And as you can see, if you watch it, I moved Gmail into the center of the ICOR into the ICOR framework, which means it's the overlap of all four areas: personal knowledge management, task management, business project management, and business knowledge management, which is insane. That's where a lot of people realize, oh my God, it is really this tool in the center, what people call all-in-one solution, but it is what is their biggest friction point. They receive emails after a meeting where project updates are sent out and new actions are sent to the different people. And the moment you want to check the status of your actions, you search through the latest emails and find what was the latest email. Is there another one? What of these actions are already completed? And it's complete nonsense, because at this point you need to realize that any email you receive, even that there are actions inside, is still just a piece of information. And if you don't have an action system that actually manages properly these actions that are inside this email, well, then your email client becomes your action system too. And it is the biggest friction system that you can actually have when it comes to action. So these insights you realize just by understanding that there is information and action when it comes to business productivity.
Correct. And the thing is that the moment that we position any tool there in the center of the ICOR framework, it's a dangerous area, okay? It's a dangerous area because that represents that you are that famous approach of one tool for everything. And we have tried to our best, okay, forcing just one tool to manage every single thing inside a productivity system, and it's chaotic, okay? It's chaotic, and especially because you tend to bet on specific tools for specific use cases, and then it's when you start duplicating the things, okay? Because imagine that you position the email there and you consider that also it's a project management tool. The moment that you bet on a project management tool, that's the moment that things collapse, okay? Because if you want to make a comment, where do you put it? Do you put it in the project management tool? Do you send an email to your coworkers? How do you handle those situations? And then that's why it's literally impossible. And this is something that we challenge anyone, that if you are a busy professional with hundreds of items, okay, talking about information, action, project management, task management, SPDs, thoughts, insights, everything, okay, trying to consolidate everything in just one tool is really difficult, okay? I think that that approach only works in cases that you don't have a significant volume of information or actions, and then, well, you can survive with those Notion templates, you know, or any other tools. Many people bet on Tana, okay, and they work with them, but it's really difficult. I remember the moment that we tried to use Tana as a BKM system, and it was chaotic. There are much better solutions in the market that are specialized in offering those type of features. And the moment that you start comparing one tool for everything versus one tool that is really specifically designed, that has been specifically designed for that purpose or that feature or that process, it's impossible to compare, okay? It's impossible if you want to compare, I don't know, Todoist as a task management tool with Gmail. It's impossible, okay? Those are the people who send them an email, okay? Whenever they have a task, they send an email to themselves, and then they try to handle that. It's something that it's really difficult, and well, we don't recommend that. It's a matter of giving it a try and then concluding by yourself that this doesn't work, okay? So I think that to finish this conversation and discussion about the Gmail, I think that the best position possible for most busy professionals will be in the intersection of business knowledge management and the personal areas, okay? Action, personal project management, and in PKM, okay, personal knowledge management.
Exactly. And now that we move Gmail back into this 3 overlap intersection, we see now already, just by having the 5 tools on this ICOR framework, well, and if you want to know the 4 tools that we have in PKM, that was the previous episode we talked about. But just having it in this 3 overlap intersection, we see now a gap in our productivity system when it comes to tools. The project management area, the business project management area is empty. There's no tool in there. So this ICOR framework already tells you what might be missing. Like Paco already mentioned, it's not missing. Maybe you're not doing project management. Also, it's unlikely that you don't do it as a professional here. You're just probably not aware what project management really means. And that's what we will get to. But this being said, Gmail is back here, and it's still in the intersection of personal task management. And you were just about to talk about how email manager is actually a task manager itself.
Yeah,
and very important.
And this is something, yes, this is something that I struggle a lot, okay? How to manage the actions, because this is something really difficult, okay? The moment that you need to manage actions that belongs to a tool that its main purpose is managing information, because that's, email wasn't made to plan and execute and complete actions, okay? Email is an information system since its inception, okay? And then how the heck do you handle that? And the beautiful thing is that little by little, the main players, okay, like for instance, Gmail, is starting to understand that email was a struggle in the business world, okay? And they try to create microsystem there inside the tool that allows to manage them as tasks is possible, okay? That's a moment that, for instance, satellite apps like Superhuman, for instance, make a great job about splitting, clarifying, but also being able to use it as a task management tool, okay?
Well, now there we go. You already mentioned another tool that you are using, and me too. It's Superhuman, and you mentioned it's a satellite app. So for those who see it, we just have to hover over it, the Gmail, and now we can decide if it is a satellite app or not. So a satellite app is just converting the core application and improves or extends the functionality of the core application. And that's what a satellite like Superhuman is. Superhuman cannot function without the main core application, in this case, the email client. No matter if it is Gmail or Outlook, it needs to hook into the actual email client. And then it visualizes the data in a different way. And that makes it a satellite application. And just by looking at this now, it makes it much easier to replace a satellite application instead of the core application. The core application, your email client, holds all the information and data probably over decades. You cannot quickly switch the email client, whereas a satellite application can be replaced more or less easily depending on how deep your workflows are established in this satellite app, but you can replace it without hurting the core knowledge that you have built up. So you can just replace Superhuman with Spark Mail, for example, and it just visualizes the emails in a different way. That's it. The other advantage of these satellite apps is consolidating other email clients into one single inbox, but that's another thing to discuss about. That's another episode. Yeah. Well, that's true. A whole other series of episodes, I'd say.
Yeah, because
sorry for interrupting, but
we have the thing is that we have tested. I think that most of the main, email clients there that can be used to enhance the experience of the basic ones. We can call them basics, okay? The ones to really manage the email like Gmail or Outlook. Well, I even try Hey Email, okay, that it's an email service on its own, okay, and it was impossible, okay, because I lost control of my email, okay, and that's something that we can never think of, okay? We need to have the control over everything, okay? And this is really, really important, okay? But going back to the topic of today's podcast, let's be fully focused on the personal project management area, because I've always stated that it's much easier than the information, okay? Because the world of information is full of subtleties, nuances, abstract things for our mind, okay? When we think about I would say an insight, an idea, what the heck, man? It's really difficult to differentiate between them. Also, talking about information, it's not clear if it's going to be useful or not. The moment that you move to the world of action, things become much more specific and concrete, okay? Because for you, when you think about action, okay, a task, okay, task is something you need to do, okay? We can define it one way or the other. In the ICOR methodology, we perfectly define what a task is, okay? Because that's the thing, that when we mention such a generic word as a task, we need to know what we are referring to, okay? But the thing is that the task is something that we need to do. We consider that a task takes from 15 minutes to 3 hours. Okay, that's the definition, because under 15 minutes we call them speedies. Okay, so we need to define
what is longer than 3 hours, right?
Then,
if it is longer than 3 hours, or maybe 4 hours for some people, it is too complex, the task. So it probably needs to get broken down into separate tasks, into and then maybe, well, what you would call subtasks. Also, we only have the level of tasks to them not getting confused. What about the main task? Is this still an action? No, it becomes a container, and the subtasks become the actual tasks, right?
Correct.
So if it is longer than 3 hours, we really look into this. Is it worth keeping it as a task, or is it much more complex than I initially thought, and I need to break it down into simpler tasks in order to manage it? So this way you stay in control to work on tasks on a day, and you get this sensation of completing things in a day and making progress towards completion and goals. And, well, again, a whole other story.
Yeah, but the thing is that I haven't found in my whole life not being able of creating a task under 3 hours. Okay, many people challenge us and say, well, I have a 5-hour task. Impossible. You can perfectly start splitting into shorter tasks so that you get that sense of control, because we also have to think that the moment that we think about a 3-hour task, we are not so good and so excellent talking about estimations, okay? And there are delays, and then everything becomes a mess. So that's the longest task size, but I force myself even into moving into 1.5 and 2 hours, okay, of estimated time for a task. But the definition, the ICOR definition, task is an action item. That's why we always recommend to start any task with a verb, okay, that represents the actions that you're going to execute, because that helps you force to define and create a task. Because if you are not able to clearly see the action, is because you are thinking about a container, okay? The moment that you cannot define clearly, okay, the moment that you say report, but what is that? Is that draw conclusions from the report, create a report, make research related to a report? What the heck, okay? That's why we are forcing ourselves, because the moment that we move into the world of action, we need verbs, okay? Verbs in infinitive, because that allows you to create that time scope, that time estimation much easier. When I think about, I need to make research about a report or whatever, I need to define, if it's not clear the estimation, I need to force the things, okay? And I will make that research for just 3 hours, okay? So that the planning process becomes much easier and intuitive, okay? So, well, to the meat, the tools, okay? In the task management world, we need to find out the best players possible, okay? And in our opinion, one of the best ones is the one that I use, and that is Todoist, okay? And now here comes the classical story, okay? That I say that I just use Todoist for speedies, okay? And then it's the moment that people understand that they should only use Todoist for speedies, okay? Tasks under 15 minutes. And that's not true, okay? That's not true. Todoist is a perfect task management tool. For me, one of the best. I have tried a lot, okay, during my life. And the only thing that I stopped using Todoist, it was due to the graphical user interface. But there was a moment that Mr. Solid told me, well, they have improved a little bit. And I said, what the heck, man? 2-3 years without paying attention to this tool that I used in the past. I will give it a try again. I think that was like 2 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And since then, I admit it, they made an amazing work talking about simplifying. I have to say that they get a lot of inspirations from things a little bit, that it's one of the most beautiful task management that I've ever used. I love it. I love it. But for me, Todoist is much better. We are not going to start analyzing the whys behind. But for me, I have a tool specifically designed for speedies in my case, okay? Because I'm managing hundreds of speedies per week, and I need just a tool to manage them all, okay? Because for me, my task management system, as my life is quite complicated, okay? I need to go a little bit beyond just a task manager task manager, and I need a project manager tool, okay, that I feel comfortable with, and that's Linear, okay? Linear is the tool that I use for managing my tasks, okay? No matter that it's a super project management tool, okay? It goes far beyond task management, but for me it works, okay? It works.
Now you see, I placed Linear into that personal task management area, and now the question is, do you handle really projects in there? I think so, right?
Yeah, correct. My personal projects are managed there. Because here, it's important to say that the moment that you are running, if it's your case, okay, that you are managing multiple businesses, each ICOR framework should represent just one, because if not, everything's going to become chaotic, okay? Because I'm using multiple project management tools, for instance, depending on my companies. And no matter that I'm using Linear, and that's one of the reasons why I'm using also Linear as a task manager, talking about myself, okay? Because I use it as a project management tool for one of my companies, okay? But as here we are just drawing, okay, and creating the ICOR framework for the paperless movement, okay, me as part of the paperless movement. In the paperless movement, Linear is just my task management tool, talking about my personal area, okay? So it says there because in the project management area, we use ClickUp, and I use ClickUp, okay, inside the paperless movement, okay? So here, I isolate Linear, and I consider that it's just for my personal project management area, whereas ClickUp is the one that I use for project management with my team. Okay, and then with that, we got the structure of tasks. Okay, because this is the same way that I said that information is full of abstract things. There's something that is abstract also in the world of task management. Okay, that is time management. Okay, because things becomes blurry. Okay, and we think that any task management tool is the perfect time management tool, because also that's what many tools, like for instance, Todoist, reinforce every single day, okay? You can have a view, a calendar view, that now it looks like you are managing time. And we have always stated that's not the case. You need a specific time management tool to manage your time, okay? And here we again split, okay? We got the calendar to represent the events, those that come out of the outer wall, okay? Those are your commitments, okay? In a calendar, we always recommend to just position your events, the meetings that you have, okay? Things that represents constraints, okay? You cannot avoid those meetings. Those meetings will consume your time unless you start canceling meetings. That it could be an option, okay? You can start canceling meetings as a beast, and then your calendar is completely empty, but that's not the case, okay? And then how do we manage time? Well, then we can see with a planner, okay? A planner is a tool that was created to manage time, okay? And that's where a tool like Sansama, okay, that it's a tool that anyone who has started using it, I would say, it has been completely life-changing, okay? Because it's the moment that people really understand task management versus time management, okay? Task management gives you the structure, the list of things that you need to do, okay? And maybe you can create what we call a due date, okay? The date that you will execute or dedicate time to that task, okay? But it's the planner that allows you to make such an essential process or workflow that it's planning, okay? We need to plan before start executing, okay? We have to prioritize the things based on time. And this is something important, okay? A planner forces you to, one, see the reality, okay? The time constraints, the limitations of time. Whereas a task management tool, I can keep, feeding the beast, okay? And I will never perceive that lack of time that we are suffering as busy professionals, okay? And the planner is the perfect tool to show that, okay?
So it's important again. Now you could always list out your tools that you use, but having it on the ICOR framework gives you so much more on understanding why you use the tools. Now we have it here, and in your mind, Paco, it makes all the sense what you use each tool for. But like we showed last time, when we click on the tools, we can go to the subcategories and actually click on what categories we use these tools for. So let's do this again. Sansama, you said already you're using it for the daily, weekly planning. Then you use it for daily routines, something we didn't even talk about today.
Yeah.
In such great detail. And this was about it. So now the question would be, but well, Sansama, you can add tasks there and you can move the things to your calendar events and things like that. But this is where it's important that you define perfectly why you use the tool for, identify the gaps that might other tools do better, and close the gap with these other tools. If we go again to the tool stack that we showed last time and go down here, we now see in the personal projects area, we have these gaps of secondary categories, which is missing tasks, calendar events, reminders, speedies. Well, we already added these tools here too, which is the Google Calendar. And there again, we can now select the Google Calendar you use for calendar events.
Correct.
And reminders you use Todoist for, I think.
Yes, correct. Correct. Yeah. And also tasks and speedies.
So therefore, if I go to Todoist, we can select tasks, speedies, and reminders. And for linear, I think for the sake of simplicity, let's remove linear as it is
perfect.
So clear. So to keep the things easier for the audience.
Yeah.
And now you see we have these three things here and we can connect these together. So this means I can actually move Todoist over Sansama, and instead of satellite apps, we select now a direct connection, and the same for the Google Calendar. And now we see that these two tools are connected to Sansama because we want to get a consolidated view on all the things that's happening to make the best planning possible. If we have floating actions all over the place and email, I have to connect email too. And I have also email, actions. I always have to check all the different systems to get a better understanding of what is going on in my life to then make a weekly planning. And that's a lot of friction. That's what people call weekly review and all these things. But if you have a system set up like this, where everything comes together in one place, it makes it so easy. And I just removed linear, but linear goes also into your Sansama, right? And also does ClickUp, but that's something we talk about next week. Let's do it anyway. And this way, you now have a perfect view what you need to do this week and then start planning things out. If we now go to our tool stack and scroll down, we see the secondary categories for the task management is now full, right? There's nothing missing.
And sorry to say this, but this is beautiful, okay? And this is a way, it's not because we are the creators of this story, it's because it's really pragmatic, okay? You can see all the gaps. We have distill our heads to the limit to think about all the different processes and workflows that any VC professional needs in all these different areas. So we could state that if something is not covered by any of the tools, you are missing into something, okay? If you don't have a way of management related to tasks, to events, to speedies, to all the different things that we have shown clearly here in that, also see the redundancies. The moment that you see that for the same function, let's say, for instance, imagine that for tasks, we kept the linear thing, and I say that for tasks, I used to do is and linear, beware, okay? Beware, the moment that you have in the same position two tools, you need to clearly define the different use cases that you're going to use each tool for. Because if not, here's where the trouble begins. Because depending on the circumstances, you will store one task in one tool, another one's in another tool, and then the retrieval process will become chaotic. And the moment that you put on top of that all the volume, okay, and we are talking about hundreds of tasks, imagine the mess that you are creating. So it's really important that for each specific process that we have delivered there, the different type of things that you should cover in the different areas, you have just one tool. That will be the simplest way of starting. And the moment that you get used to this is the moment that you can start enhancing the things by using a specific task for a specific sub use cases, that you can find in any of those type of features. Okay, so
and this gives you a lot of insights and understanding of what is actually going on in work productivity around you, where people use calendar for everything, and you just need to open up the calendar and think about, can you really use your calendar for all the subcategories like tasks, speedies, daily routines? Yeah. People have whole systems where they say, I'm using only my calendar for everything. But if it is the most efficient way, that's questionable. That's what we figured out, at least for ourselves, that we need to have a dedicated planner in order to do that. That's focusing on planning, or a task management tool. I don't want to move around like Paco, hundreds of tasks on a calendar. It's impossible. So all the 15-minute tasks, the time you manage the task itself takes longer than doing the actual task. And that goes into email then again, where I'm not naming any people, but some gurus out there say you have to send every email to an action system and plan it out. No, it depends on what you have in the email. And now we close the loop, because the email management system becomes a task management system. When you process your emails, you're going through the emails, and that's the checklist that you're going through. These are the to-dos. And if they are less than 2 minutes, you immediately do them. You're not moving them elsewhere. It's a waste of time. If there are 15 minutes, I keep them in the email management too, and just process them the moment I need them. If there are really tasks that take longer or need to be broken down, then they move into Sansama and they schedule out time in order to focus on this one email. This allows you to burst through thousands of emails each week, and by focusing on triaging the emails in no time. The problem many people have with email inboxes is that they go through hundreds of emails, and after the third email, they realize, oh man, that's important. Well, let me call this person quickly and let's figure that out. And half the day is gone. You still sit there with 70, 100 emails and you have no clue what's going on. We have to decouple these processes from each other and realize, okay, now I'm processing the email, but trust then on the overall system that every email gets addressed at some point in the system. So if I have something longer, it goes into the action system, it gets planned out, I will work on it, it won't get forgotten. And all these things then start to fall into place. And it goes far beyond this. When I talk about my corporate life, when I started to use Asana as my personal project manager back then, that eventually became the team that I was leading, our project management tool for the team. And then bringing in thousands of people, over 1,000 people from different departments into Asana, because I was able to show we are more efficient than working in this single source of truth when it comes to project work. It's easy now to understand. We've been handling 16,000 tasks per month. Now, let's think again about what we talked about, having scattered actions all over the place. That's what so many companies have. Some actions are in the email, the different project managers, the person, right? The project manager people, they have their own project management tools they are using. So scattered actions there. And each individual who is part, just a few percentages per project, need then to figure out the task that they have to do and plan this. That's a mess. So if we have the option to have a single source of truth like this, it makes it so more streamlined for the whole team. But here we're in the personal area, it's the same thing. And I just want to mention Brian here in the chat. He's also running 4 businesses in parallel like Paco does. And he can relate to this thing that Paco said, that each business should have its own ICOR framework. And that's really important. And it is more than that. It's why we also say the personal area of the ICOR framework is your personal work, in all the other businesses, because your personal productivity system should be always the same across all the businesses. That's how you personally organize yourself. And only the business part for different businesses are different. So you can have the system for different businesses, different tools for different businesses. But then people ask, but what about my private life? What about my hobbies? What about the projects that I personally do? Of course, this goes into this too. But at the paperless movement and with ICOR, we focus on this work bubble. We focus on one example business that you're running, so you get the understanding what's going on. And once you get the grasp of this very specific use case, it's so easy then to spread this into your personal life, to make the team aware how they should work and why we are using the tools, or then think about the other businesses, how they run and optimize them on the go. But we have to add boundaries to get an understanding what's going on. And that's what ICOR is all about.
Yeah, and it's important to say that the moment that you start seeing these ICOR frameworks in parallel, all of them, you start to find out synergies, okay? And that's why, for instance, I create that synergies with Linear, okay? And why it doesn't matter, the company I'm facing related to how I manage the personal information.
Because it is the reality, okay?
Yeah, and it's important. And also I would like to highlight that the beautiful thing is that ICOR was created by thinking about how our brains work, okay? And based on that, it's a cognitive methodology, okay? So this means, for instance, as an example, that we try to force to use the exact same workflows for many different things, okay? So the same way that I manage my speedies is exactly the same way that I manage my email inbox, okay? I'm using the exact same process or workflow, as we call them in the ICOR methodology, to run that process without any friction at all, okay? It's inside any of the routines, but the workflow that I execute is exactly the same. I'm following the same triage, the same concepts, the same way that I send things to Sansama if needed, for instance. And that's what matters the most, okay? That we are creating a simplified system out of something that is really complex, because here we are seeing like a ton of tools, okay? And people who bet on just one tool for everything will say, but it's much easier to have everything in just one tool so that I have that sense of control that I know that it's inside there. Yeah, inside, but you cannot, you know how to store it properly, how to retrieve. And also, you're gonna bet on weaknesses, okay? Notion, for instance, cannot compete as a task management tool with Todoist. Notion, sorry to say this, but it cannot be such a planner like Sansama. And you can go on and on and on related about the strength and the weaknesses of each tool, because any tool has a strength and weaknesses. And our approach is take advantage of the strength, okay? Because usually the learning curve, okay, it's much easier to learn how to manage tasks using Todoist than trying to create a task management tool on Notion, okay? No matter that you buy or you receive as a gift a template, okay? It won't work. We have to think that these guys have been working for more than 2 decades, I would say. I think that Todoist, it's close to 20 years old or so. So imagine how complex the world of task management is, that there are a ton of guys. I think that in Todoist there are 100 people. I don't know if that's true. Let's say 30 people, I don't care, 30 engineers working 20 years to develop and create a task management tool, and you think that you, just in a weekend, are going to create the perfect task management system for yourself. If that's the case, then is that, congratulations, your life is really simple, okay? But if your life is a little bit complicated, you will see that it's impossible. It's much easier to bet on the best type of softwares out there for each specific function, and then make them work properly, okay? And create a system that you are using the best pieces possible for this puzzle, that it's what it is. This productivity system is a puzzle that you need to have the best pieces possible, okay? And that's how you become productive, how you don't suffer, how you take advantage. Imagine right now, let's say about AI. I'm convinced that you will use AI much better on Todoist. I think that those guys will think right now, they are thinking about this rumble thing, that you just start rumbling and then the AI create the task.
That's again a whole other episode.
That's something, but the thing is that they will implement, like Linear, for instance. Linear is doing, or Superhuman, an amazing implementation of AI. The moment that you are trying to implement AI into a generic system that you have created by yourself is the moment that things will crumble, because it's impossible. We are talking about huge mountains of knowledge, okay, that it's impossible, because also it's not your mission, okay? Your mission is your company, your life, your responsibilities, it's like trying to, create, design and build a car, okay, to transport myself. It doesn't make sense, okay? And for VC professionals, let's spend on professional tools that really deliver that added value that we demand.
Amen. That's Amen. All we needed to hear in the end of this session. Thanks so much, Paco. Great session. Next time we dive into business knowledge management, I'd say. So
great.
Again. And we have to dive into our inner circle cohort that's launching today for the next month. So we cannot wait to dive into this.
Will be fun.
Catch you guys up next week then.
Sure. Thank you, guys. See you.
Bye-bye.